We are at CoinSummit in San Francisco, California. I'm Perianne Boring, and I'm joined now with Bobby Lee from BTC China, which is the largest online exchange in China. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, financial institutions in China are not allowed to process transactions in Bitcoin. Now, some have taken this as Bitcoin is banned in China. How accurate is that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the media has at times misportrayed the situation in China. So what happened was in December, we think due to the high volatility and the high price increases in Bitcoin, the China state government, the central bank in essence came out with a written ruling about how to regulate Bitcoin in China. And what they said was two things. Number one is that Bitcoin is considered personal property, sort of like a tangible virtual asset. And therefore people have the right to own it. People have the right to buy and sell Bitcoins. People have the right to trade or even barter goods and services with Bitcoin. And therefore exchanges like ours are allowed to exist. We're China's very first and oldest Bitcoin exchange. So we can still offer the service of allowing people to buy and sell Bitcoins. Now the second thing is what caused a lot of news and stirred up a lot of emotions is they also said at the same time, the central bank stated that Bitcoin is not a currency under Chinese law. So because it is not a currency, it is still something legal, it's not a currency. So what that means is existing companies, financial companies like banks and financial institutions, even payment processors who deal with currencies, they are no longer, or rather they're not allowed to deal with Bitcoin directly. So they wouldn't be able to take deposits, open accounts, or make payments in Bitcoins, or accept services in Bitcoins.
So in other words, Bitcoin is not legal tender in China, which is no different than what it is in the United States. However, when this news came out, which you're talking about last year, it caused a massive sell-off in Bitcoin. How did that affect your exchange?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it affected our exchange. We saw really high volumes. People got really nervous. So in the end, due to the way the government is structured in China, they have a lot of power in terms of regulating. They can just go out there and make statements and decide how to do things without a lot of, let's say, public input, if you will. So in that sense, when that came out, it came out as a surprise that China would come out so eagerly to say Bitcoin is not a currency. Because until then, it was sort of in the gray area. It wasn't sure if it was currency or not. But by them stating it is not a currency, it set that in stone, set that in black. And in doing so, it caused a lot of angst and nervousness, and that's why there was a big sell-off in pricing. So on our exchange, we saw trading volume spike at first, and also after that, there was a cooling effect. Essentially, a lot of the Chinese people who were in it to buy and sell, to speculate, there was a cooling effect. So they were all, in essence, sort of took a step back, sat on the sideline. It was a chilling effect. Yeah.
So a lot of people got out.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So how has this affected your business model? Have you had to adjust?
We've had to adjust, yeah, certainly. So we are now still back to the free trading commission, trying to encourage more people to come in. But the reality is probably 80 to 90% of the market has stepped back, have cooled off, and they're waiting to see what's going to happen next.
Now, how difficult is it to set up an exchange in China?
It turns out it's not very difficult. It turns out that it's a pretty low barrier to entry, and the reason is the exchange business, the Bitcoin exchange business in China is not regulated. So when something is not regulated, anyone can go do it. Right? There's no clear laws, there's no rules, there's no licenses. So essentially anyone who puts up a website can purport to be a Bitcoin exchange, and that's what's happened. And I think that's actually bad for the market, because certainly you have a lot of choices for consumer, which is a good thing. But the bad news is that when there's no regulation, these different exchanges will do things differently to different standards. They have different ethical standards, different financial standards, different accounting standards, and in the end, if you play fast and loose like that, you risk going bankrupt, you risk the exchange being defrauded, you risk the exchange being robbed of its Bitcoins, losing money, and then in the end, what happens is it hurts the Chinese consumers. It hurts people because they end up losing their money. So what happened to Mt. Gox is a clear case of an exchange not very well run, yet without any regulatory controls. So there was no best practices in place, and they were allowed to hide a lot of bad debt, hide a lot of negative asset, and they were running that for months and years possibly, and in the end it went belly up. So it really hurt a lot of consumers.
Right, and this is very different to how it is in the US, because you have so many regulatory players in the United States. You have the CFTC, the DOJ, FINRA, FinCEN, Treasury, and so it makes it a little bit more complicated. There's a little bit more regulatory risk. However, we're seeing a lot more VC money being invested in U.S. companies.
That's right.
So what challenges are there for Bitcoin companies, Bitcoin startup companies in China?
So the challenges are the same. It's very competitive. Very competitive. So we're seeing investment. We got our VC investment last fall. We're the first Bitcoin company to get funded in China and all of Asia. So we're very happy about that. That was our mission, to become the largest Bitcoin company in all of China, all of Asia. So I think the challenge is similar. We're still pushing the technology forward. We're still, despite the regulatory uncertainty, if you will, we're still pushing the technology forward, creating more products and services. And so we're very excited about that. I think there's still huge potential for China. It's just that it sort of took a step back after what happened in December. So we're probably 6 months, back where we were. Yeah.
There was a study that was published in the Wall Street Journal that said 76% of Americans don't have a clue what Bitcoin is. What do you think that number is in China?
Oh, I think it's probably similar. Yeah, if not higher. Yeah. It's still in the fringe. Bitcoin is still in the fringe.
What do you think it will take to make Bitcoin legitimized in China?
I think it will take time. I think time is of the essence. You can't have something go from the fringe to mainstream in such a short amount of time. It's only been 5 years from Bitcoin's existence. But in reality, it's only been 1 year since Bitcoin has ever reached any mainstream sort of news and attention.
Right.
So I think it takes at least 2 or 3 more years, and it'll take more companies like ours, a lot more startups, a lot more innovative companies to test new ground, to release new products and services, to make Bitcoin easier for everyone. And also, it'll take the government to be proactive, to step in, to issue the right regulatory framework so that companies can be well run, and we can also protect the consumers' interests and consumers' funds.
What impact does the U.S. government have over the Bitcoin markets in China?
The U.S. market actually has global impact. I think the U.S. has always been the leader in innovation and finance worldwide. So what we see is a lot of countries are deferring their regulatory practices until the U.S. clarifies its regulatory practices. So I wouldn't be surprised if when the U.S. clarifies its regulatory practices, China would step forward and follow along. Yeah, similar to all the banking laws and regulations, very similar globally. So I'm definitely in favor of more members of Congress, senators, and representatives to become more educated and more knowledgeable in Bitcoin so that they can set the right legislation and regulation for Bitcoin in America. I'm definitely in favor of that. That's the best thing that can happen to Bitcoin, is for people to become more educated around Bitcoin, what all the pros, all the cons. What's most dangerous for Bitcoin is for lawmakers to go in blindly, make decisions on law and policy without understanding the potential benefits, the pros and cons of Bitcoin. And to be honest, Bitcoin is very, very complicated. It's technology wrapped in lots of technology, lots of jargon, and it's something revolutionary because for the first time it's a decentralized asset class that is digital yet is scarce and limited. So never in the world before have we had something that puts these words together. It's very complex, so that's why I'm very supportive of lawmakers in the US and worldwide to learn more about Bitcoin, to understand it better before jumping the gun and having a knee-jerk reaction regulation.
So how do you think the summit's going?
It's going really well. I'm really happy. What a great turnout. Really, all the key players in the market, and also really focused, very well organized. I'm really happy. Yeah. Really impressive.
You possibly have won the award for traveling the farthest distance. You said you came from Shanghai,
yes,
right?
from Shanghai, yeah.
Yeah, so what is different about this summit as to what you're seeing at some of the other summits and conferences around the world?
Yeah, I've been to several Bitcoin conferences around the world. This one seems to be more professionally run, first of all. I think it attracts the venture capital, the entrepreneur. So it's more focused in that sense. It's less about the end user. I think I've been to other conferences which are more about the normal, the end users of Bitcoin. So that's a little bit different, yeah, but it's good. I think globally there's over a dozen or close to 2 dozen conferences around the world now in 2014. So it's important for the different conferences to find their own niche, if you will.
Are there any other Chinese companies here?
Not that I know of. Yeah. The Chinese companies in Bitcoin space, they tend to stay in China. Yeah.
And is China reaching out to any of these other conferences to bring more of the conference goers to China? Possibly. China will have one of its major conferences, I think, in the month of May. There's a Bitcoin Global Summit in Beijing, so that will be China's first global conference for Bitcoin. So China hasn't even had a Bitcoin conference yet?
Not yet.
Okay. All right, thanks so much. Again, this is Bobby Lee from BTC China, and I'm Perianne Boring with Money and Tech.